Welcome, viewers, to Speaking of Our Words, a production of the Kenosha Writers Guild. We will be bringing you, in this format, a series of videos to allow you, the viewer, the opportunity to experience the oral reading of the work of local writers, a rare opportunity. Additionally, for your enjoyment and to give you insight into their creative process, we will interview the writers right here about their work. I'm Marshall Smith, and I'm your host. I'm a published poet and studied creative writing in the MFA program at the University of Iowa Writers Workshop. Today, Dave Gourdoux of the Kenosha Writers Guild will read from his novels and talk to us about his work. Dave, a hearty welcome.
Thank you, Marshall.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
What do you have for us today?
I have a brief excerpt from my first novel, Ojibwe Valley.
Excellent, excellent. Go right ahead.
Okay, this is a book about a fictional community in northwestern Wisconsin. And the excerpt I'm going to read from is about, the book follows a lot of different characters. And this character has just returned to the valley after suffering some tragedies in his life. And he's inherited his uncle's cabin in the middle of the woods. And he's returned, it's a February night, about 20 degrees below zero. He fell asleep and just woke up in the middle of the night. And that's where we start.
Great.
Looking out the window, he was overwhelmed by both the sheer beauty and the desolation of the night. He felt both certainty and doubt, certain that the woods he stared at would fulfill the promise they'd made to him all those years earlier, and doubt that he'd actually be able to embrace the solitude he'd longed for over the past 15 months, now that it was actually here, staring him in the face in the forms of the shadows of the trees and the snow. And now that it was speaking to him, voiced in the empty sounds of the wind howling and whistling through the trees. As he looked out over the frozen landscape and listened to the wind, he realized it was whispering to him a secret of death. It was telling him that it's cold and dark, death is, and barren and lonely, and it moves over your soul like the slow dark shadow of a cloud moves over the naked trees and the snow and the frozen dead leaves. And when it passes, after it's gone, you become part of the unending winter, silent and still and cold. And there you remain, frozen beneath its surface, for eternity after eternity. A shiver ran down his spine. He looked at the stove and became aware of the diminishing fire. Turning away from the window, he threw it under the log in the stove and climbed back in a sleeping bag. He laid there, warm and snug, eyes open, and stared at the shadows cast by the fire as they danced on the ceiling.
That's lovely, and I'm going to say right now that I've had the opportunity, and I'm grateful for it, to read Ojibwe Valley. And Dave, I very much like the book and think that you're very talented as a writer. I'm especially noticed, because I remember that passage very well from when I read it, that it's written softly, simply, and there's a haunting spirit about that particular passage. That, of course, is, you mentioned death. So how did the idea to write Ojibwe Valley come to you?
Well, it's based on a real place in northwestern Wisconsin that my folks came from. And it occurred to me that my parents they've both passed now, but they were getting older. And the whole generation was getting older. All the stories I'd heard over the years, and the people that live there now would have no idea of them. Yet those people from before, previous generations, are what made the place the special place it is now. So I want to capture that. I wanted to write a book about how the past influenced the present and how the present shapes the future.
I see. Okay. Very interesting.
And I wanted to capture the stories of a lot of these forgotten, kind of simple people, farmers and whatever.
Okay. So speaking more broadly about your other work, or even within this work, how do writing ideas come to you?
They usually come to me more in terms of themes than specific, which makes it difficult. It's hard to write a theme. You know, you need a good story to kind of assert your theme. But so basically, I've got a lot of things that I believe in thematically, and I just wait for an idea for a story to pop out that bolsters one of those themes or not.
Very interesting. So when you started Ojibwe Valley, Dave, did you sort of imagine it wholly from beginning to end, or did you make discovery along the way? Did things change? Could you give us any examples of how that process unfolded?
Yeah, no, I had no idea at first. First, I just had a couple of stories that I was writing, and they're kind of short stories that I kind of linked together. And then as the characters became more interesting to me, I thought, well, what else happened in this guy's life? So I'd write that, and how did this guy impact that guy? And it kind of, there was never, in Ojibwe Valley, there was never really a plot to speak of that motivated me. It was more characters in place. And so just kind of as the characters evolved, the story evolved too. And in fact, where I first thought the story was going, it ended up being nowhere where it went.
So I remember reading it, and this happens to me with me personally with many books. I was so involved with it that I believe it. I believe it's really happening in my life, and I believe that I'm right there inside the story, watching this unfold. And I'm wondering, when you write, are you living this as you're writing it?
Yeah, I think I am. It's the dialogue is particularly. People seem to think I'm good at dialogue, but I just let the characters talk, and I kind of channel them. They talk through me. So yeah, that's very much true.
Channel, I like that word. So when you finish a work like Ojibwe Valley, or even your current novel, are you able to put it aside and begin a new project, a new work, a new novel, a new piece, a new story? Or do you tend to keep rereading, and as you reread, do you tend to change and alter and shift things, words, sentences, paragraphs?
With both of my first two books, you reach a point where you get so sick of the characters and so sick of the story you're telling that when you finish it, the last thing you want to do is go back. And so I actually started my second novel before I finished my first one, and worked on both for a little while. But no, you just spend so much time, you invest so much of yourself, and at least for me, that last thing I'd want to do is spend any more time with those people.
That's very interesting. I've never heard that before. That's fascinating. So while you are doing it, are you editing as you go?
Yeah, very, very much so. In fact, more so than I used to, because I've got Parkinson's disease and my eye-to-hand coordination is getting very bad. So I write a sentence on the computer, and it's 75% of it needs to be fixed right away, and I just can't stand to leave it, so I go back and fix it. So it's really kind of slowed me down a little bit.
Do you find yourself changing words a lot, or saying, I don't like that word, or I don't like the way that sentence is the rhythm of it, or do you have any of those sorts of thoughts, and do they affect your writing and your editing?
And when I'm really kind of on a roll, when it's going really well, it's like a sculpture. It's like the words come out and you just slap them down on a page. You come back a little while later and you take this one out, add that one. You kind of whittle the nose the way that you sculpted, and you add a new nose or something, or you take this word piece, put it up there, you kind of patch it together, and it kind of comes from a mumbo jumbo goulash of kind of a word salad thing, and you take it and shape it into something. And those are the best moments. So that's where I enjoy the most, is when those things hit you. That makes sense.
That word channeling seems to ring in here a little bit. When things are going well, you're sort of channeling.
Yeah, you're just typing whatever's popping in your brain. And then you go back and you say, hey, that's not bad, but it would be better if I stuck this piece here into there, and so on.
Great. So you have another piece to read here from I believe might be your newest novel. Mm-hmm. I Don't Know Why, I think is the name of it. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So if you would like to read that, we'd love to hear it.
Sure. This is a short chapter that occurs early in the book and really kind of kicks off all the stuff that happens afterwards. So it doesn't really need much more explanation. Okay. The thing I always remember first is the ancient oak tree that towered over the others, its trunk thick and twisted, its bark gnarled and dark gray. It marked the eastern edge of the small woods that stood like a mirage, an oasis of trees in the middle of an unending desert of corn. They stretched out to the horizon, the cornfields did, and they blanketed gentle rolling hills, enormous even against the midday sky. Tom Musgrave and I would walk the western edge of Miller's Field on the way to and from the new middle school on the south side of town. I don't recall why, on that gray afternoon in mid-October of 1970, we ended up in the woods in the center of the cornfield, why we veered so far out of our way home. I don't remember us walking through the tall yellowish-brown corn stalks to get there, but I remember that they hadn't been cut yet. As we entered the trees, 2 crows flew up from the other end, about 15 yards away, close enough you could hear their wings. One of them cawed, loud and shrill in the cool late afternoon. I saw him first. His eyes were gone. He was propped up against the trunk of the big oak tree, and his eyes were gone. There were big black holes where they should be. I froze, unable to move. Tom behind me asked, "What's the mat?" and didn't even get madder out of his mouth when he froze, too, when he saw the body in the filling station jacket with the name Sam printed in dark blue letters in a white circle in the otherwise blue jacket. His eyes were gone. "That's Sam Richter's jacket," Tom said, "from the Sinclair station." Sinclair was a chain of gas stations back then, like BP or Citgo nowadays. Their logo, the symbol printed on their signs, was a green dinosaur, a brontosaurus. Sam worked there. His dad owned the place. It was in the days when filling stations still had attendants who'd come out and pump your gas for you. You'd pull in, the bells would ring, ding, ding, and Sam would come out. Sam Richter was only a couple of years out of high school. I remembered him as a starting forward on the basketball team that went to the conference finals in 1969. Tom's brother, Jim, was on the team too. In fact, Jim was the leading scorer. The dead body didn't look like Sam. It was definitely Sam's jacket. Whoever he used to be, now he was dead. He was dead in the woods in the middle of the cornfields, leaning against a big old oak tree, and his eyes were gone. "Look," Tom said, "look at his chest." A hole had been blown through it, a big red hole. Tom noticed it first. I was still looking at his eyes, rather at the dark holes where his eyes used to be. They were gone. "That's not Sam," Tom said. "Holy crap, Mary, Mother of God." This was something we'd heard his mom say all the time. It sounded weird coming from Tom. Somebody shot him. I couldn't think of anything to say. I was only half hearing Tom. His words were just sounds. There was a distance to them, like the sound of the breeze through the corn stalks, or the continued cawing of the crows. I was still looking at the holes, the empty black spaces, where the eyes used to be. In a parade of images, a crow taking off airborne from the woods, a green brontosaurus, a basketball game in the crowded high school gymnasium, a rifle blasting. All rushed to my mind but couldn't penetrate, bouncing off my consciousness like raindrops tapping on a window, none of them able to supplant the black emptiness of the body's eyeless gaze. He was staring at me. The black holes met my eyes. I knew that somehow he could see, not like everyday seeing, but he could see past what was in front of him. He could see past my eyes into my soul, into my very being, and beyond. And the blackness of his barren eye sockets recognized in that unending destination the same dark emptiness. "This is bad. This is really bad," I heard Tom say. "We've got to get out of here." He turned to leave. I just stood there, unable to move. Tom said, "Come on, Jack, let's go." I still didn't move. "Jack, Jack!" Tom was yelling out, trying to get my attention. Finally, I turned and looked at him. I could feel the fear. I could feel the tears straining to be released. That's messed up, that part. "Jack, come on," Tom was saying softer now. "We've got to get out of here." His voice was delicate, his eyebrows furrowed. He was looking at me like someone would look at a shell-shocked soldier. "We've got to go home now." I felt myself nodding my head, and I saw Tom turn and start heading for the corn. As he turned back to look at me, I could feel myself start to move, my feet and legs unthawing. I could see Tom moving in the space between the rows of corn. I was close behind him. I could see him in his plaid jacket, but I could also still see the holes. It was as if I was watching Tom, as if I was seeing everything, the stiff and rigid and weathered corn stalks, the brown dirt, the gray sky, from behind the bottomless pits of those empty eye sockets. The cool breeze, the fresh autumn air was in our faces as we made our way through the corn. I could feel it moving in and behind and through the spaces where my eyes used to be. "When we get to your house, we got to tell your mom," Tom was saying. We'll tell her she has to call the police, okay? Okay, I mumbled. We made it to the northern end of the cornfield, finally exiting the corn stalks. A slight ditch of deep green grass separated the corn from the gravel shoulder, and then the fading black pavement of Highway 17. We were 2 blocks from my house. Before we got to the highway, I stopped. Tom, I said. Tom stopped and looked back at me. What? I'm scared. I could feel the tears rising behind my eyes, and I knew I was going to cry. Crying was the last thing any 7th grade boy would ever want his best friend to see, but part of me didn't care. This was different. This was big. This was bad. I know, Jack, Tom said. His voice was soft again. I'm scared, too. And then the tears came. There was no point in trying to contain them. They came from deep down. They were wet and sloppy from inside of me, and they rushed out behind my eyes. But that was it. They couldn't have come from behind my eyes, because now I knew. The body told me. Now I knew that behind my eyes there was nothing but nothing. Wherever the tears came from, crying wasn't going to change anything. I knew that, but I kept on crying anyway. I don't know why.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you for reading that. I'm very interested in your new work, your new novel. And you describe, comparing it to Ojibwe Valley, you described your purpose, one of them at least in Ojibwe Valley, was to tell about an area that you knew very, very well personally from your life, and the simple people of rural Wisconsin and their stories and their lives, and to talk about those people from your past. You framed it that way partially. And what about this piece? What is your intention here?
Well, it's similar to Ojibwe Valley, except that this is, when I was a kid, I was born in northwestern Wisconsin, but raised in Union Grove in southeastern Wisconsin. So this is more about southeastern part of the state than northwestern. But it's more than that. I wanted to be completely different from Ojibwe Valley in that it's more plot oriented, and it's told in the first person instead of the third person. So there's just some technical things I want to do as a writer to see if I could do them. But it still is a piece that remains dominated by setting. Interesting.
So you wanted to go to first person. What do you think you might learn there?
I'm not sure what I thought I'd learn. I think I know what I learned, is that it's difficult. If you're telling a story that's got any complexity, at some point you have to kind of shift points of view and get other people in, because very, very rarely does one character have access to the whole story. So I found that to be very challenging.
So do you consider your work, Dave, to be of a particular style or genre? And maybe the 2 different novels are each of their own. How do you view your style or genre, and then how did you arrive at choosing how you write?
I think genre is a more valuable tool for readers than writers. I think it's a great way for readers to organize what they might want to read and not. But for me, I have trouble thinking in terms of genre as a writer. I just want to tell the best story I can. So I really have no idea what genre these would be considered. I think maybe either literary fiction or mainstream fiction, but I just write them. And I had no interest in writing a series, at least now, although some of the characters might reappear in the future. I don't want to be telling the same story over and over, So I don't know if that answers your question.
That makes perfect sense to me, and I completely get that genre thing. It's more for the English classes sometimes. Yeah. Understood. So the characters in I Don't Know Why or Ojibwe Valley, are these people that you've actually known, and is there autobiographical here?
Some of them I've known, some of them are completely new creations. And it's largely autobiographical. Is that a word?
Perfect, yeah.
But the things that are autobiographical aren't so much the events as the emotions and feelings. When I was a kid, was when my birthday fell. It was near the cutoff, so I was one of the youngest kids in my class. And I always felt very isolated from the other kids, very less mature and so on. It was as if they knew something that I didn't know. So So I tried to capture that kind of feeling of loneliness and isolation, only to a real extreme, and I don't know why. So I try and put things I've experienced either emotionally or not as much things I've literally gone through.
I see. So the autobiographical part is more the interior world of you or even people around you that you perceived.
Mm-hmm.
I see. Oh, that's interesting. So, what writers do you read? Are there any writers you would credit with having substantial influence over you or on your work over the years?
There's a lot of them, but I want to call one out in particular. Ojibwe Valley, there's a was really kicked into gear after I read a book called The Temple of Air by Patricia Ann McNair. She's a professor at Columbia College that Chris DeGuire introduced me to, and it's a wonderful book. It's a collection of connected short stories that share the same setting, and I was really fascinated by the way she made the setting a character in her stories. I tried to do the same thing in Ojibwe Valley. So she was probably my most profound influence on these two books. Otherwise, I'm a big Faulkner fan, who's also a guy who was very strong in place. Kurt Vonnegut, and Cormac McCarthy. Those are probably my favorite writers.
Okay. And they're all very different, but they've each had an influence on your work.
Yeah, I think McCarthy looks like he was heavily influenced by Faulkner, but he just had the discipline that Faulkner never had. Faulkner go crazy with these 30-some page sentences and stream of consciousness things, and McCarthy kind of follows the same themes Faulkner did, but he does it much more disciplined.
I see. So writers often have certain disciplines they adhere to in terms of their writing, and how often they write and when they write during the day, how many hours in the day they write. Do you have a routine that you use, and what might that be?
I really don't, unfortunately. I tend to do most of my writing late at night, but if I get on a roll, I can't wait to get at it in the morning, so I could easily spend all day on it. Conversely, I can go multiple days and even weeks without writing. So
I see. Okay. And sometimes I think you remarked earlier, maybe not in this interview, but to me personally, that you would perhaps even begin a novel before you finished one you're currently working on. You'd begin a new one in the middle of. Is that right?
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
how many are you working on right now?
Right now, none. I had a couple ideas, and I got so far enough into them to realize they weren't worthy of a novel. So.
Okay. So this is sort of a very open question. Why do you think you write?
I think your guest last week put it most succinctly. Chris DeGuire, he said he writes to make sense of the world, and I think that's about the most succinct way you can put it. I write to try and make sense of the world. It's about.
How long have you been writing, Dave?
Well, I've always written, but it was really after I was diagnosed with Parkinson's I started writing seriously.
Okay. Do you feel that you have a strong need to write? Is it something that you must do as opposed to choosing to do?
Yeah, definitely. It's just what I do for better or worse now. It's very much part of who I am.
Okay. So you're a member of the Kenosha Writers Guild, which we talked about at the beginning. And my last question is, how has that influenced your work, being a member there?
Very profoundly. It was 10 years ago I showed up at a meeting not knowing what to expect. And what I found was people who'd been bitten with the same bug that I was, had the same need not only to write but to share it with other people. And I've learned so much from their feedback and their criticism. I've also learned more from listening to other people critique other people's work. It's been a tremendous experience. I'm a much better writer than I was before. I'd recommend it to anybody.
Great. Can you tell us briefly about the meetings?
Well, there's two meetings. There's two meetings every month. Excuse me. The second Thursday and the third Thursday. Second Thursday is usually the workshops or in-depth critiques. And the third Thursdays are open meeting, open to the public, free of charge. And we meet at Carthage College, 6:30 on, like I said, the second or third Thursdays.
Great, great. Well, Dave, I want to graciously thank you for sharing your beautiful work with us today. Where might we find your novels and stories if we wanted to read more of them?
Ojibwe Valley is in the Kenosha Public Library, and it's available on Amazon. I don't know why. I'm still searching, trying to find a publisher for it. So.
Okay, okay. Well, good luck with that. I'm sure you will. Thank you, audience. Again, this is Speaking of Our Words, and it is a production of the Kenosha Writers Guild. Please come to one of our meetings, which are on the second and third Thursdays of each month at 6:30 p.m. at Carthage College. The meetings are open to anyone, and we welcome your attendance. Please visit our website at KenoshaWritersGuild.com or like our Facebook page, and feel free to leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Until the next video, I'm Marshall Smith. Goodbye.